Hello and welcome to Chapter 2 of the Wink Getting Started series entitled User Profiles and Store Settings. In Chapter 2 we're going to be modifying user profiles and store settings. In other words, we're going to be modifying all the basic data that you need in order to get started with Wink.
Okay, so let's begin. By now you should have already completed step 1 of the Getting Started process, that being watching the video which is on YouTube entitled Wink Getting Started Chapter 1. In that video, we describe a lot of the basic functionality that you need to know in order to use Wink properly. For example, in that video, we described how to open, edit, refresh pages, how to create new data, how to find data, how to get support, and just a whole bunch of other things that every basic user needs to know in order to use Wink properly. Now then, let's move on to the first topic of this video. Step 2. Create, modify, delete user profiles. For example, managers, sales reps, and doctors. When you begin using Wink, you're going to create a number of different user accounts. You're going to create an account for yourself. You're going to create an account for your employees, for your visiting doctors perhaps. Each one of those accounts must be assigned a particular profile or a particular set of privileges. By assigning each one of those users a particular profile, what you're actually doing is determining which parts of the software those users are allowed to access. For example, you may not want your sales reps in your store to be able to generate certain types of reports. For example, inventory reports. Similarly, you might want your managers in your store to have access to all parts of Wink so as to be able to generate all types of reports. So the first step in setting up your Wink database is to determine what privileges each of your users should have with respect to accessing different parts of your Wink software. Let's do that together now. Throughout this video, we're actually going to be focusing on this section of the software, the part where we actually set up everything related to your company. First step, as mentioned earlier, is we're first going to set up your user profiles. Here's how you do that. Begin by clicking on User Profiles. As you can see, your software has been preloaded with 3 typical profiles. You can modify any one of those profiles by simply double-clicking on them like this. If this manager profile is set up the way you'd like it, in other words that your managers have access to absolutely everything in your store, you can leave that as is. Let's look at the sales rep profile. This sales rep profile might be something that you want to modify. To modify it, click on Edit. I'll now take you through the different steps to explain what each of them does. The profile name is Sales Rep. If you want to modify that, you may go ahead and do so. Next, User Management. User Management refers to your sales rep's abilities to create new users in Wink. This is not something that employees would usually have access to. You or perhaps your partners would usually be the only ones to create new users in Wink. For that reason, I'm giving sales reps read-only access to their own user accounts. Next, Product Service Management. This refers to a sales rep's ability to create new products and new services in Wink. If your employees are involved in receiving new products from suppliers, in other words, if your sales reps are involved in the process of receiving new frames, perhaps, from your frame distributors, then you might want to give them full access to this ability over here. Or if they're not involved in the process of creating new products or services, you can give them read-only access. For our intents and purposes, I'm going to give them full access. I'm also giving them full access to the Retail Price tab, which gives them the ability to see, view, and edit retail price. And I'm also giving them read-only access to the Cost Price. You, at your discretion, may decide that your sales reps should not be allowed to see your cost. Next, Inventory. As you can see here, I'm not giving access to sales reps to this inventory section. This inventory section refers to a sales rep's ability to do an inventory audit or perhaps perform inventory adjustments. I'm giving them no access to that. Supplier. This refers to a sales rep's ability to view supplier information, your supplier's phone numbers, your account numbers, to view, edit, and modify. For all intents and purposes here today, I'm going to say no access to that for my sales reps. Ordering. This refers to sales reps' ability to place orders with my suppliers, be they labs or frame distributors. At this time, I'm saying no access to the ordering section of Wink. Receiving. As mentioned earlier, this refers to a sales rep's ability to actually receive new products in Wink. Receiving new products involves recreating your invoices from your suppliers in Wink. You may, at your discretion, decide that sales reps will never be involved in receiving products from suppliers, so you can leave that at no access if you so wish it. For our intents and purposes, I'm going to give them access here today. Shipping. This refers to sales reps' ability to ship products from Wink to suppliers, perhaps, or even to patients. Shipping settings. This refers to sales reps' ability to view, edit, modify any settings related to your shipping. As you can see here, I've given them no access. You may change that to read-only or full access at your discretion. Patient management. This refers to sales reps' ability to view patient files. For our intents and purposes, I've given them full access to that. Invoicing. This refers to a sales rep's ability to view invoices related to patients. I've obviously given them full access to that. Appointments. This refers to a sales rep's ability to book appointments. They can view them, read them, or full access. For our intents and purposes, I've given them full access. EHR. This refers to a sales rep's ability to view electronic health records. You may at your discretion decide that they need only read-only access or no access to this element. For our intents and purposes here today, I've given them full access. Finally, insurance. As you can see here, I've given our sales reps no access to anything related to insurance. At your discretion, you may decide to give them full access, for example, the ability to electronically send insurance claims. In addition to these drop-down boxes over here, depending on whether you've given someone access to something or not, a checkbox may become enabled. For example, with respect to ordering, if your sales reps have full access, we ask you a separate question being, do you also want sales reps to be able to electronically send lab orders and other purchase orders? If you want them to have full access to the ordering sections of Wink, but you don't want them to be able to electronically send lab orders, you would not check that. If you did, you would check it. I'll uncheck it for now, as I'm giving them no access. Next, as I've given my sales reps full access to all things related to patient management, I've also de facto given them the ability to accept returns and process refunds for patients. I've also given them the ability to sell at a price below the minimum allowed price for a particular product. I've not given them the ability to modify an invoice after the product has been delivered to my patient. I've also not given them the ability to modify the sales rep associated with any invoice. Finally, I've not given them the ability to electronically send insurance claims. Moving on, below here we have a series of reports. By default, all reports are listed as restricted. To select a report and make it available, you simply select it and click on this button. If a report was made available and you wanted to make it restricted, you would simply select it and click on this button. If you wanted all reports to become available, you can click on this button. If you wanted all reports to be unavailable, you would click on this button. Now that you understand the process for modifying a user profile, I'll simply click on Save. And there you have it. As you can see here, we have 3 profiles. If you wanted to create a 4th, you simply click on New and define it any way you want. You may at your discretion continue filling this out as you require it. I'm going to move on now, and we're done. The next step of the getting started process is step number 3. Update admin user info. Full address, email, telephone, Facebook, LinkedIn. Let me show you how we do that. To modify your admin user account, click on Users. Now then, what loads is a list of all users currently saved in Wink. Currently there's only one, your account, your administrator user account. To modify it, simply double click on it. As with all pages in Wink, everything first loads in view only mode. To be able to modify it, click on Edit. Now then, it's a good idea to fill out as much information here as possible, because in the event that passwords are ever forgotten, or in the event that anyone ever needs to communicate with you, the more information that is here, the easier it is for us to confirm your identity. Your phone number and certain other information may already be here depending on what you entered when you created the private database. Very important to have an email address here. This is the means by which we may communicate with you. If this field is empty, we have no way of communicating with you. Therefore, always fill in this information. Moving on, with respect to cylinders for spectacle lenses, do you want to view them in positive or negative value? I'll leave it at negative. The last thing to consider when setting up your administrator user account is to connect Wink with one of your social accounts. As you can see in the section above here, you have a username and password to access Wink. Nevertheless, it is quite common for people to forget their passwords. In order to not have to ever remember your Wink password, by simply connecting Wink with one of your social media accounts, your logging into Wink becomes effortless. A second reason to connect Wink with one of your social media accounts is because we frequently publish updates to our software on our social media accounts. Therefore, when you connect your social media accounts with ours, you'll be kept up to date on all new updates regarding your Wink software. This includes videos and helpful tips and tricks on how to get the most out of your newly evolved Wink software. A third reason is to communicate with other Wink users all over the world. You may have questions for them, or perhaps you may have answers to some of their questions. Finally, when you connect via one of your social media handles, you're helping to spread the word about Wink, and we're counting on your support to help maintain Wink as the world's first and only totally free practice management software for eye care professionals. Now then, as you can see, I've already connected via my Facebook page. To show you what it looks like, I'm going to connect via LinkedIn. And there you have it. As you can see, if this window doesn't close on its own, you can close it now and return to Wink. And there you have it. I'm now connected by both Facebook and LinkedIn. Alright, then let's move on to the last section here. As you can see, you can upload your image if you wanted to. Finally, user privileges. As you can see, because I'm the administrator user, from a company level perspective, I have super privileges to user management. User management, as mentioned earlier during the user profiles, is the ability to create new users in Wink. If you have super privileges, it means you have access to absolutely everything. Now that we're done, I just click on Save. Alright, let's move on to our next step in our Getting Started process. The next step in the Getting Started process is step number 4. Create one other user, be it a manager or a sales rep. Here's how you do that. Just as we did before, click on Users. Now, rather than double click on my administrator user account, I'm going to click on New. I'm now going to create an account for one of my employees. My employee's name is Marlon Brando. Again, I can enter all of his address information, including his country and zip code. Again, he'll be selecting lenses using in negative cylinders. His username. I can also set his password. You can also invite him to connect via one of his social media handles. Very important, always put in his email address so that we can identify him if he ever asks a question. The next step is a very important step. Click on User Privileges. You now have two access levels to consider. The first is company level access, the second is store level access. As discussed in Chapter 1 of the Getting Started series, Wink is both a single store and a multi-store application. Therefore, for every user, you need to define what is their company level access and what are their various store level access privileges. Now, if you only have one store, it'll probably be the same. But if you ever had 2 or 3 or 4 different practices, then you might want to give different users different levels of access to the different practices. So, as discussed, Marlon Brando is a sales rep in one of my stores. Therefore, I don't want to give him the ability to create new users at the company level. He doesn't require doctor access, store access, or advertising access. So I'll be leaving all of this just like that. However, in my store, in my head office, he is a sales rep. And click the green check mark. If I had a second practice, I could select that second practice's location over here, and perhaps he could have manager level privileges at that second practice. But for now, I'm just going to leave this like this. I'm not going to click this green check mark. And that's it. That's the process for creating a new user. When you're done, simply click on Save. And we're done. The next step is step number 5. Create one eye care professional. Let me show you how to do that. To create an eye care professional, click on ECPs. What first loads is likely an empty list. Next, click on New. Now then, just as before when we created our sales rep, we need to create our first doctor in the system. Here's how you do that. First, determine whether the doctor will have access to Wink or not. In this case, I'm going to say he does. Next, what is his username? Hippo, and his password. Next, what title does he have? I'm going to say he's a doctor of optometry. Next, what is his name? Kos Hippocrates. Again, you can enter all of his address information, including his country and zip code. Again, a phone number. And don't forget, an email address. His license number. By default, we've selected negative cylinders. Next, click on User Privileges. Once again, should this doctor have access to company level information? Yes or no? If he does, you may want to give him full access to certain items and no access to others. Next, from a store level perspective, should this doctor have access to information at the store? The answer is certainly yes. Therefore, select the location and select the type of access that the doctor should have. When you're done, click the green check mark. User picture. At this point, we would recommend that you upload a picture of your doctor. This is especially recommended if you intend on integrating Wink with your website, so as to permit your patients to automatically book their own appointments. Oh, and by the way, at the same time, they can also fill out a preliminary EHR. The reason for uploading your doctor's image here is to permit your patients to recognize him more easily during the booking process. Now then, to upload an image, simply click on Select Image. Now select the file and click on Open. And there you have it. The image has been uploaded. Now then, the last step of setting up a doctor's account would be to sync it with Google Calendar. In order to properly sync Wink with Google Calendar, we first recommend that you sync each of your doctor's Wink calendars with your practice's Google Calendar. Then, via your practice's Google Calendar, you can share with each doctor's individual Google Calendar. Here's how to sync Wink with your practice's Google Calendar. Okay, the first step would be to save the data that we've put in here so far. Let's do that. Next, open your practice's Gmail account. As you can see, I'm already logged into it. Next, via your practice's Gmail account, click on this icon at the top right here and select Calendar. I've now accessed my practice's Google Calendar. Now, return to Wink. Now, select Google Calendar as I've already done here and click on Authorize. I happen to have many accounts, so I'm going to select the account that I want to sync with. Wink would like to manage your calendars. Click on Accept. Give this page 5 to 10 seconds to close on its own. If it doesn't, the job is done. You can simply close it. It could take a few minutes for the service which runs on Wink's server to properly sync with your practice's Google Calendar. Nevertheless, when it does, this is what will appear. As you can see, my doctor now has his account appearing in this list. From here on in, whenever an appointment is booked in Wink, it will also appear in this Google Calendar. From here, you can share this doctor's calendar, which appears in your practice's Google Calendar, with this doctor's Google Calendar by clicking here and selecting him via his email address, and simply following the rest of the on-screen instructions. This now concludes the process of creating a doctor's account in Wink. The next step of the Getting Started process is step number 6, create tax codes. If you ever have to charge sales taxes on any products or services that you sell, or if you ever have to pay any sales taxes for any products or services which you purchase, you need to create tax codes in Wink. Let me show you how to do that. Begin by clicking on Tax Codes. The first tax code that I'm going to create here is going to be my New York tax code. This is for a fictitious New York state sales tax. The name of this tax is state, as opposed to federal. The tax amount is going to be 5%. My effective date, in other words, when does this sales tax become effective, will be January the 1st, 2015. And click on the blue check mark. Next, click on Used by Stores. What you must now say is which of your practices can use this sales tax. Currently in our database we only have one, our head office. And click on the blue check mark. When you're done, just click on Save. I'm going to create another tax now, for a second practice, perhaps, which I may be opening in the near future. I'll click on New. This will be a tax for my Canadian store in Quebec. My tax code will be QC. My description will be Quebec Sales Tax. My first tax name will be GST. In Quebec, there are actually 2 sales taxes applicable to every purchase, so the second sales tax is called QST. Next, the first sales tax amount is 5%. The second sales tax amount is 10%. My effective date is the 1st of January 2015, and I click on the green check mark. Now, just as I said before, it may be necessary that this tax be affected to another practice. Currently I only have the one practice, so I'll select that practice. And there you have it. When you're done, just click on Save. Alright, now that I'm done, I click on Close. And I'm done. The next step in the Getting Started process is step number 7. Create, add, or delete payment methods. The different payment methods which you might accept in your practice include cash, check, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, debit, gift cards, or other. Let me show you how we change those now. To modify a payment method, click on Payment Methods. When you created your private database, we preloaded a series of payment methods for you. The first thing to do would be to delete any payment methods which you do not accept in your practice. For example, you may want to delete Amex. If so, double-click on it, click on Edit, and click on Delete. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. Next, you may want to delete the diner's card. To do so, double-click on it, click on Edit, click on Delete, and yes. Next, If you've integrated Wink with a USB cash drawer, you may want to modify this cash payment method as follows. Double-click on it. Click on Edit. Now, when a user selects cash as a payment method, you will want Wink to automatically open your cash register. But after having modified it, click on Save. Next, you may want to add a payment method here. For example, you may want to receive payment via gift certificate. To do so, click on New, Payment Method, Gift Certificate. Available for which store? Again, you always have to say which store can receive gift certificates as payment methods. Click on the green check mark and click on Save. And as you can see, it's been added to the list. So this is the process. Simply go through this list, delete all payment methods you don't accept, create new ones which may be missing, and modify any that require modifications. When you're done, simply click on Close. And we're done. The next step is step number 8. Configure the SMS Gateway app on your Android device. Via Wink, you may at your discretion send text messages to your patients. Sending text messages is a very efficient way for confirming that an appointment has been booked and for reminding patients 24 hours before the appointment that the appointment is confirmed. There are many other uses for text messaging. For example, when an order is ready to be picked up, or if there's a delay. Now then, here is the process for configuring the SMS Gateway app on your Android device. The first thing to do via your Android device is to go to the Play Store. Next, click on the magnifying glass at the top right and enter Wink SMS. Next, scroll down to the Wink SMS app and select it. Next, click on Install. Next, allow the Wink app to install, and when it's completed, click on Open. Next, click on Reset. Click on OK, and enter the email address and activation code for the account. These will be emailed to you. Now it's very important that you enter the information here exactly as it was sent to you by email. Even the smallest change, a blank space, a capitalization, will force this process to fail. Therefore, please be sure to enter the information in these two fields exactly as they were sent to you by email. When done, click on Authenticate. Next, select which practices should have access to this SMS Gateway, and click on the Start button. Now allow the software a few moments to sync. Normally this could take from 1 to 5 minutes. Now, click on Resume or Start. Now allow the software a few moments to sync. When you see this, it means that your configuration is complete. Please note you may at any time pause the SMS Gateway by clicking here. And we're done. Alright, let's move on to the last step of Chapter 2 of the Getting Started series. Number 9. Update store details. Fill in maximum information, doctors, logos, email accounts, and others. Let me show you how to do that. To enter your store information, click on Stores. Next, to access your store's location, double-click on it at the top here. By default, your data loads in read-only mode. To be able to modify it, click on Edit. Now then, all the data you see here is the data that you entered when you created your private database. If you want to modify it, you may do so like this. For example, your location name may not be head office. It may be downtown. As you can see here, my address information has already been entered. Any modifications that are required should be done at this point. Tax number 1 and tax number 2. Depending on the state, province, or country in which you operate, your government may require that your tax IDs appear on your practice's invoices. If they do, enter those tax IDs here, like this. If you have 2 tax IDs, you may enter them like this. If you only have the one, simply delete. Next, make sure that the system is set to the correct time zone in which this store operates. Make sure that the phone number here is correct. If there's a second phone number, enter it here. Make sure your fax number and, if necessary, your toll-free number appear here as well. Finally, make sure your email address appears in that cell right over there. It is very important that this information be entered correctly. The information which you enter here is the information which will appear on your practice's invoices, so take the time to do it right. Next, you can select your ICD codes here. Next, select the default language in which your practice's invoices should be generated. Finally, if you have a website and you want it to appear on your invoice, enter that information right over there. The next part here is a little bit more involved. The opening balance date is a very important concept in Wink. To briefly introduce the topic now, you likely have a few hundred or perhaps a few thousand frames and other inventory items in your practice. You purchased these products before you began using Wink. Because Wink can integrate with your accounting software, be it your QuickBooks file, your Simply Accounting file, Xero, or Wave accounting softwares, it is important that we define what products you purchased before you started using Wink. In other words, what products have been accounted for in some other software. Therefore, we're going to set the opening balance date to be the date which we start using Wink. Let's say January the 1st. Now then, when you close the inventory opening balance, you should check this off. Your inventory opening balance is said to be closed when you have finished entering all the inventory which you purchased before you began using Wink. Again, this process will be explained more fully in a later chapter of our Getting Started series. For now, simply leave it unchecked. Next, what is the default setting that you would like to apply to Wink with respect to sale of spectacle lenses? Do you want them to be sold as a pair or in a single lens format? If the default setting should be pair pricing, then leave it checked. If you would prefer that each spectacle lens be sold independently by default, you would uncheck that. As most practices use a pair pricing model for spectacle lenses, I'm going to leave that checked. A few moments ago, we introduced the concept of sales taxes. Again, it's quite likely that the majority of the products which you sell in your practice are tax exempt. Nevertheless, some of your products may not be tax exempt. For example, certain non-medical products, like perhaps sale of eyewear cases. The question therefore is as follows. For those products or services which you sell which are not tax exempt, do you want the amount of sales tax to be shown separately on the invoice, or do you want the amount of sales tax to be included in the unit price? If you want the sales taxes to be included in the unit price for any products or services that you sell in your practice, click here. If not, leave it unchecked. The majority of North American practices will leave this item unchecked, whereas perhaps the majority of European practices may want to check it off. For now, I'm going to leave that unchecked. Next, invoice note. In this space, you can write a note that you may want to appear on all of your invoices. For example, and there you go. Next, let's enter this particular location's business hours. I'm going to say that these are the business hours effective January the 1st, 2015. My practice is open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We open at 10 o'clock every day. On Mondays, we close at 5 p.m., but this must be entered in a 24-hour mode. The 24-hour clock for 5 p.m. is 1700 hours. Same thing for Tuesday. We close at 5, which is 1700 hours. On Wednesday, 1700 hours. On Thursday, we're open till 9 p.m., 2100 hours. And on Friday, we're open until 8 p.m., 2000 hours. Now that I'm done, I click on my green check mark. Now then, moving on. This section at the top right here is the final step of setting up your store. The first thing to do is to say which doctors work at this store. Earlier, we created an account for Dr. Hippocrates. Now that I've selected him, click on the green check mark. Next thing to do is to upload my store's logo. To do so, click on Select Image. Find the image on your computer and open it. And there you go. Next thing to do, your holidays. Which days are you closed? Click on the calendar icon, select the month, select the day. If necessary, make it yearly. Our practice will be closed on December 25th every year. Moving on. At a later stage, we're going to discuss lab ordering. For now, in order to properly process lab orders, you need to define in Wink what your store's capacities are with respect to edging and mounting of lenses. In other words, do you have the equipment to edge and mount, or mount only? If you do not have the equipment, you would click on No Edge, No Mount. I'm going to leave it to edge and mount. Next question, do you carry stock lenses? If yes, click the check mark. Next question, are you able to do edge and mount on all frame types, including drill mounts? If there's one of these which you cannot mount, simply uncheck it. Next, is there an RX verification process in place at your practice before lenses are ordered at a lab? If yes, check it off. Next, is there an RX verification process in place at your practice before frame and lenses are delivered to a patient? If yes, click that check mark. And we're done. Next, you may at your discretion connect Wink with your email account. This is to permit you to send emails to your patients, like for example, recalls or reminders. In order to configure Wink to send emails via your practice's email account, it is necessary to fill out these fields. Now then, if you don't know how to connect this with your practice's email account, you may prefer to connect this via your practice's Gmail account. And if so, we've already provided you with the information on how to do so. The data required for these cells was actually provided to you by email when you first signed up with Wink. This is what the email looked like. By clicking on this icon, this document will download to your computer. Now, simply scroll down to this page. On this page, we've provided you with all the information you need to send emails via your practice's Gmail account. Simply copy these settings into Wink as follows. Alright then, the first thing to do is to enter your outgoing email address in this first field. Next, enter your practice's name in this field. Next, enter the SMTP hostname. Next, enter the server port. Next, select whether it's an SSL or TLS connection. Next, enter the SMTP username. Next, enter the SMTP password. And finally, select whether SMTP authentication is required. As stated earlier, these are the default settings for your practice's Gmail account. I've entered them here. Now, to test whether the information you've entered is correct, click on Send Test Message and enter your email account and click OK. If this message pops up, it means everything is set up properly. The last thing to do is to click on the SMS tab. If this appears, it means that you've properly configured the SMS Gateway app on your Android device. Please note, if you would prefer not to install the SMS Gateway on your Android device, you can request that Wink installs it on a Wink Android device. The only difference between installing the SMS Gateway app on your Android device or a Wink Android device is an extra $15 a month to open a dedicated account with our local telecom provider. Now that I'm done, I click on Save. And I'm done. This now concludes Chapter 2 of the Getting Started series. During this video, we've reviewed the process for creating user profiles, users, and TCPs. We've created tax codes and modified payment methods. Finally, we've modified our store's information, making sure that it is complete and accurate. In Chapter 3 of the Getting Started series, we'll be reviewing the settings required for many of your practice's peripheral devices and printers, so stay tuned for that. We hope you enjoyed this video. We look forward to working with you further. Thanks very much.
Was this video helpful? Are you enjoying Wink? Spread the word. Share Wink on your social media page.